In the world of music, Rick Nelson was a shining star, captivating audiences with his incredible voice and unforgettable songs. From his early days as a teen idol to his later success as a respected musician, Rick's journey was one of fame and success. But amidst one of his tours, tragedy struck, and the music world would lose one of its greatest. Join us as we explore the incredible journey of Rick Nelson, from his meteoric rise to his untimely demise. Rick Nelson was born as Eric Hilliard Nelson on May 8, 1940, as the second son of the entertainment duo Harriet and Ozzie Nelson. Rick's own entertainment career started at the young age of 8, when he began starring alongside his family in the radio sitcom The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. And just 3 years later, at the age of 11, he appeared in his first feature film, Here Come the Nelsons. The film was a hit, helping the Nelson family transition from radio to television, and it would be that same year that The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet would make its television debut and would become one of the longest-running sitcoms in television history. By the time he was 13, Ricky was earning over $100,000 a year, and by the age of 16, he had saved $500,000, which would be around $5.7 million today. Ricky wasn't just any teen idol, he was the teen idol of his time. Known for his likable and easygoing personality, though he was sometimes a bit shy. The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet continued until 1966, but already long before the show ended, it was clear that Ricky inherited the musical talent of his parents. As a young boy and teenager, he learned to play the clarinet and drums and taught himself basic guitar chords. And above all, he enjoyed singing his favorite Sun Records rockabilly artists in the bathroom at home or in the showers at the Los Angeles Tennis Club. Then, at the age of 16, Ricky wanted to impress his girlfriend, who was an Elvis fan, by recording a record even though he didn't have a record contract. With his father's assistance, he managed to secure a deal with Verve Records, a notable jazz label seeking a young popular figure who could potentially be a singer. And this would mark the start of Ricky's long and successful career as a popular recording artist. On March 26, 1957, Ricky recorded his first 3 songs. His version of Fats Domino's I'm Walkin' climbed to number 4 on the Billboard Bestsellers chart, and its B-side, A Teenager's Romance, reached number 2. Not stopping there, his debut album, Ricky, was released in October 1957 and hit number 1 before the end of the year. Following these early successes, Ricky got a more prominent role on the Ozzie and Harriet show and ended every 2 or 3 episodes with a musical number. Ricky's strategy of using television to promote his music helped him become the first teen idol to successfully boost his record sales this way. And when the television series went on summer break, Ricky went on his first tour, performing at state and county fairs in Ohio and Wisconsin, with the 4 Preps as his opening and closing act. In 1958, Ricky Nelson released his first number 1 single, Poor Little Fool, and a year later he was nominated for a Golden Globe as Most Promising Male Newcomer for his role in the movie Rio Bravo. Then, on his 21st birthday, Ricky officially changed his recording name from Ricky Nelson to Rick Nelson. But his childhood nickname proved hard to shake, especially among those who had grown up watching him on Ozzie and Harriet. From 1957 to 1962, Rick achieved 30 top 40 hits, trailing only behind Elvis Presley, who had 53, and Pat Boone with 38. And that was not it. Many of Rick's early records were double hits, with both the A and B sides hitting the Billboard charts. After leaving his teen idol name behind, Rick made another impactful decision as he moved away from the pop music of his youth and began to perform in a more country rock style. He quickly became a pioneer of the genre and an early influencer of the so-called California sound. However, his popularity took a significant hit with the arrival of the Beatles in 1964, and he didn't make a top 40 comeback until 1970. That year, he recorded Bob Dylan's She Belongs to Me with the Stone Canyon Band, marking a resurgence in his career. This comeback included another success with Garden Party in 1972, which reached number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100 and earned a gold certification. But unfortunately, his comeback was short-lived. His record label was acquired and subsequently folded, and his next albums suffered from poor promotion by the new label. Ultimately, Rick Nelson's career momentum stalled again by the end of 1972. But while Rick might have stopped releasing new music, he continued to tour frequently, playing the songs his fans had already grown to love. And as the interest in his performances grew once again, so did his need for fast and reliable transportation. Rick Nelson, who was not fond of flying and disliked traveling by bus, surprisingly decided he needed his own plane for touring. So in May 1985, after years of renting private jets and using commercial flights, he purchased a Douglas DC-3, a 14-seat aircraft built in 1944 with registration number N711Y for $118,000. But despite the DC-3's reputation as one of the most reliable commercial transport planes in history, this particular plane experienced a ton of mechanical issues. In one instance, his band had to physically push the plane off the runway after an engine failure. And in another incident in September 1985, both engines malfunctioned, preventing the plane from flying and causing Rick to miss the first Farm Aid concert in Illinois. Consequently, concerns about the safety of the DC-3 were growing among the band members. The lead guitarist, Bobby Neal, was even warned by his wife not to fly in it. And the bassist, Patrick Woodward, shared his fears about flying in the plane after experiencing 2 emergency landings. Patrick's wife remembered him saying he seriously thought he would die in that plane. On top of that, Rick Nelson didn't even want to go on the tour that was scheduled for late December 1985. For some reason, he just didn't want to go, but had to because he needed the money. Known for his extravagant lifestyle, including spending a lot of money on vacations, sports cars, and home renovations, Rick was financially stretched. As a result, his agent scheduled a series of tour dates that would keep him and the Stone Canyon Band touring for roughly 250 nights a year. On December 26, 1985, Rick Nelson and his band left for a 3-stop tour across the southern U.S. Their performance in Guntersville, Alabama on December 30th concluded with Rick singing Buddy Holly's Rave On, a song Buddy Holly himself had chosen for his final performance at Clear Lake, Iowa on February 3, 1959, also known as the day the music died. Eerily, Rick Nelson's final words on stage that December night were "Rave on for me" as he and his band left the stage. Little did he know the fate that awaited him. The following morning, on December 31st, 1985, Rick Nelson and his entourage were set to fly to Dallas for a New Year's Eve celebration at the Park Suite Hotel. However, due to mechanical issues, their departure was delayed, and Rick's plane did not take off until 2 p.m. The plane, destined for Dallas's Love Field, some 450 miles away, carried 2 pilots and 7 passengers. Rick, his fiancee Helen, 4 members of the Stone Canyon Band, and his road manager, Donald Clark Russell. But 3 hours and 8 minutes into their journey at an altitude of 6,000 feet, the flight crew contacted Fort Worth Center with a concerning message.
I think I'd like to turn around and head for Texarkana here. I've got a little problem.
The air traffic controller provided the crew of N711Y with directions to several nearby airports. However, shortly after, pilot Bradley Rank told the controller that reaching those airports was not possible.
Okay, 1-1 Yankee, can you make it back to Texarkana? We gotta get off the ground.
At 5:11 p.m., he reported smoke in the cabin, and at that point, the plane began to drop, trailing flames and black smoke from its right engine into the evening sky. A minute later, the plane popped up on the radar at an altitude of 600 feet. In the meantime, the pilot and co-pilot desperately tried to find a place to land, as dense smoke made it impossible to see through the cockpit windshield. They even attempted to navigate by leaning out of a cockpit window, but it was too late. Small pieces of metal began to fall off the plane, igniting several small fires. The plane then struck several power lines and a pole about 30 feet above the ground before crashing into multiple trees, exploding into flames upon impact. Bob Allison, a helicopter rescue pilot, was dispatched to the site, landing there at 5:30, 16 minutes after the crash. "All I saw was a ball of fire," he would later recall. "I couldn't make out anything but a fiery mass." After the crash, the pilots, Kenneth Ferguson and Bradley Rank, managed to escape through the cockpit windows. They called out to the passengers but got no response. Concerned about a possible explosion, They quickly moved away from the wreckage. Ken later revealed that Brad warned him at that point. "Don't tell anyone about the heater. Don't tell anyone about the heater." In his official statement, Brad Rank indeed didn't mention any problems with the heater during the flight. He only mentioned that he was checking on the passengers when he noticed smoke in the middle of the cabin where Rick and his fiancée were sitting. However, despite Brad Rank's advice against it, the other pilot, Ken Ferguson, did discuss the heater in his testimony to the National Transportation Safety Board. He explained that the passengers had requested heating, so he tried to turn on the cabin heater, which was separate from the cockpit's gas-fueled heater. But despite multiple attempts, they couldn't get the cabin heater to work. Soon after, smoke began filling the cabin. The pilots opened the air vents and cockpit windows to clear the smoke, but it only got thicker, making it difficult for them to see. Additionally, the onboard oxygen system and handheld fire extinguishers were not used. According to the accident report, Ken noted that the cabin heater started malfunctioning shortly after takeoff. He mentioned that whenever a warning light for the heater illuminated in the cockpit, the crew would turn the heater off, wait for some time, and then turn it back on. Ken also reported that Brad checked the back of the plane multiple times to try to fix the heater, and repeatedly instructed him to turn the heater back on in an attempt to get it working properly. "One of the times I refused to turn it on," Ken shared, adding that, "I was getting nervous. I didn't think that we should be messing with that heater en route." And it wasn't long after that one of the passengers came forward and reported smoke in the cabin. Ken responded by turning off the switch and initiating a 180-degree turn toward Texarkana. Brad then returned to the cockpit to begin the emergency descent, but it was too late. After the impact, Ken expressed that he was afraid the plane would explode, which is why he and Brad did not attempt to rescue the others. Both pilots were found about 100 yards from the fiery wreckage, covered in soot from the burns. It took firefighters more than 2 hours to put out the intense fire caused by the plane's magnesium construction, and it wasn't before the next morning that the bodies of the victims were recovered. All 7 people in the passenger section died, but the scene revealed something even more heartbreaking. Upon entering the plane, investigators made the heartbreaking discovery that before his untimely demise, Rick was shielding his fiancée Helen, a final act of love. Additionally, all bodies were found at the front of the cabin, just behind the cockpit door, suggesting that the passengers had been trying to escape when the fire overwhelmed them. This raises a haunting question. Could the pilots have saved them? Autopsy results later revealed that all 7 passengers died from burns and smoke inhalation, but that was not it. Lab tests indicated that Rick Nelson's body contained small amounts of both metabolized and unmetabolized cocaine, as well as marijuana and the painkiller Darvan. Initially, this caused speculation that the plane fire might have been caused by the passengers using drugs, specifically by freebasing, which involves using a flame. This might have been a possible cause of the fire. However, a toxicologist from the Federal Aviation Administration noted that while the presence of the substance was confirmed through tests, these tests did not determine how or when it was used. He also mentioned finding small amounts of the substance in the bodies of other passengers but did not specify which ones. After an extensive 18-month investigation by the National Transportation Safety Board, this theory was dismissed. Despite traces of cocaine found in several passengers, including Rick Nelson, there was no evidence of drug use during the flight or any drug-related items found at the crash site. Ultimately, the idea that cocaine freebasing caused the fire was ruled out based on these findings. The investigation also explored whether the cabin heater could have caused the fire. While definitive evidence linking the heater to the blaze was not found, the NTSB report stated, "There is no doubt that the fire did originate in the area of the heater." Additionally, the investigation revealed shortcomings in the crew's response to the emergency. The NTSB criticized pilot Brad for not following the in-flight fire checklist upon detecting smoke, opening the fresh air vents which should have remained closed, not directing passengers to use supplemental oxygen, and not using the handheld fire extinguisher available in the cockpit. The board noted that while these measures might not have prevented the crash, they could have improved the passengers' chances of survival. This aligns with the observations of firefighter Lewis Glover, one of the first on the scene, who noted, "All the bodies are there at the front of the plane. Apparently they were trying to escape the fire." Rick Nelson died at the age of 45. As we reflect on the impressive life of Rick Nelson, we remember him as more than just a teen idol. He managed to chart 53 of his songs on the Billboard Hot 100, including 19 that reached the top 10, proving his widespread popularity and musical talent. After his death, Rick was honored with an induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1987, further solidifying his legacy and place in music history.